It's 10 a.m. Therefore, I'm going to call this meeting to order. Please confirm the meeting is being live streamed and recorded for the public audience.
We are live streaming and recording.
Thank you. We will begin with our roll call of board members. Oops. I am Dr. Tia McKinnon. Catherine Klausmeyer. Eric Ebersole. Karen Bailey. Dr. Kelly Anderson.
Here.
Pamela Gaddy.
Here.
James Bell.
Morning, everybody here.
Natalie Miller, our designee from the Department of Human Services. I know you said something, Ms. Miller, but I didn't hear you. Can you do it again? Sheriff Matthew Crisafulli. Chief Paul Kiefer. Lee Weiss. Laurel Moody.
Morning.
Michael Brown. David Engel.
Good morning. This is Greg Phillips sitting in on Director Engel's behalf this morning.
Thank you. Claire Cabral. Dr. Sharon Hoover.
Good morning.
Good morning. Megan Berger.
Good morning.
Thomas Alban.
Good morning, everyone.
Lee Nadine Oppenheim.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Joseph Cormier.
Good morning.
Good morning. Sergeant Kevin Britt.
Morning.
Good morning. I did see Eric Ebersole come in.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. Is there anyone else that I did not call or came in after I called your name? Welcome, Ms. Johnson. Please confirm that we have a quorum.
Good morning. Yes, we do have a quorum.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
The last meeting of the advisory board was in December. The December meeting was recorded, and that recording is available on the MCSS website. As such, there are no meeting minutes to be approved. We're going to take a look at today's agenda. Here we go. Are there any additions to today's agenda? With none being heard, is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Do you have a second?
This is Sharon. This is a second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Any abstentions? Excellent. The motion passes and the agenda for today is approved. With that business out of the way, let's move to our first item on the agenda. It's for Kate to share with us executive updates. Kate?
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see you all, albeit virtually. I was hoping we'd be able to be in person for this meeting, but I'm looking forward to our next in-person get-together. So before I get into the staffing updates and changes, you're going to hear a lot from the team about some of the progress we've made, a lot of the activities that have been going on. It's been an incredibly busy legislative session, so you're going to hear about that. You're going to hear from Jessica about this summer's conference. So we're very excited about that. We've already kicked off planning for the summer conference. You're going to hear about some work, some additional and new work we're doing related to behavioral threat assessment teams. So that's going to be coming up. But I am incredibly pleased to welcome 3 additions to the team. So first off, we have Jeff Smith. Jeff joined us from Talbot County Public Schools. He is a new regional staff member. He's got Kent, Caroline, Queen Anne's, and Talbot counties. He is also supporting Jim Hott on the school resource officer training. So we're really excited to have Jeff on the team. Next is Ja Coates. Ja joined us in early January as a new communication and instructional specialist. So we're very excited to have Ja on the team. And then finally, Reem Chalet has joined us. Reem is an intern actually with the University of Maryland College Park. Reem is going to be supporting Jayan Jabraj on our data side of the house, doing some interesting and hopefully informative work related to some of the data that we collect and that we share. So we're really excited to have all 3 of them join the team. We are now, again, fully staffed, so that's also very exciting. So we've had some vacancies for a little while, but those are all now filled. So we're really excited for the good work that's coming.
Thank you, Kate. I understand the joy of being fully staffed, as the Charles County Special Education leadership was fully staffed as of January 8th. So we're excited. And it's a testament to the valuable work happening at MCSS that you attract such high quality members to the team. And students want to come and learn how to do their work with us. Are there any questions from the board members for Ms. Bryan? Okay, we're going to move on to agenda item number 2. The next item, oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
The next item on the agenda is information about the July 2024 School Safety Conference. I understand that planning is moving along quickly for this summer's event. And I did see a registration notice in my email, which I passed on to the staff, administrative staff here in Charles County.
Excellent. And we appreciate that. We really do. So the summer conference, we've held it every year since even before my arrival, all the way back to 2017. Actually, I think we even had one in 2016. Every year, we make changes to the conference. We to expand knowledge, to bring in additional subject matter experts and speakers. And Jessica will talk a little bit about this year's conference, but the biggest change that we made this past year is rebranding the conference. So instead of saying the Maryland Center for School Safety Annual Summer Conference, we have rebranded it to Prepare. So every year you will get notices about the Prepare conference coming to Maryland again in the summer. The branding will remain the same every year. What will change every year is our theme for the conference. So I'm going to pass it over to Jessica, who's going to talk about this year's theme, talk about some of the specifics for the conference. And we really do hope that many of you will be able to join us this summer. So I will pass it over to Jessica.
Thank you, Kate. Good morning, everyone. As Kate mentioned, we've rebranded the conference to Prepare, which you will see and hopefully have seen some of our notifications coming out. This year's theme is Safer Schools Together, which we are excited about. As the conference has grown every year, we've had over 47 speakers come to us that wanted to speak at our conference that are really excited about the topic and what we're doing. So we have identified our speakers and are working now to finalize that list, which will be coming out in the coming weeks. To date, we've had over 180 registrations already, and that will continue through June of this year. One great thing that will be coming back again this year will be the art showcase. So we did introduce the art showcase last year for Maryland students to be able to interpret school safety. This year's theme for the art showcase is safe spaces. As you'll see the flyers, you'll see information coming out on in regards to the showcase. We hope to have hundreds of students participate and enter and give us their interpretation of safe spaces. So we hope to see you all at the conference this year. We'll have lead-in webinars, as well as the night of the 16th, we'll be doing a BTA workshop and kicking off the conference full steam for the full days on the 17th and 18th. So the conference will be at Turf Valley Resort in Ellicott City again, July 16th, 17th, and 18th. 16th will be early registration and the BTA workshop, 17th and 18th full day conference, and lead-in webinars in the weeks prior to that. Are there any questions for me?
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
Joe Cormier, parent of a special education student. For this art showcase, how is that flyer getting distributed to the school systems?
So we are sending it to all the superintendents, as well as the superintendent's newsletters, as well as to all of the art teachers for the state. We are also just working with MSDE to get that distributed to all of the jurisdictions. In addition to that, we take on our own efforts and send it out to like your local YMCA, Boys and Girls Clubs, some of the private schools, archdioceses and things that we have contacts for. So we try to blanket it as much as possible, and we do ask that staff, board members, et cetera, share it as well to get the word out to our local students.
Thank you. I know in Calvert County, where I'm from, we're very effective with our student government organizations and our student member of the Board of Education. So I hope that they're being leveraged to get that word out because they are very active with the community.
Yes, we will do that as well. I will make sure that that happens as well.
All right. Thank you so much.
I encourage everyone.
I just wondered, is there a way that we could get the flyer? Could you send that to us in a PDF? So I know I'm the school health liaison to MIMS, and I could get that out through our school health supervisors across the state, and they could share that with students as well.
That'll be wonderful. Yes, I will send the flyer out to all of the board members following the meeting.
Perfect. Thank you.
Dr. Hoover?
Yeah, hi, everybody. I just wanted to mention, and you may already be doing this, but you may be aware that through the blueprint, there's the Consortium for Coordinated Community Support Partnerships to expand school behavioral health across the state, and 129 provider organizations were just awarded support to expand school behavioral health. So they might be a natural audience for this. I just wonder about working with the Community Health Resource Commission, CHRC of the Department of Health, to get the word out through that mechanism.
Thank you. Yes, I will look into that as well. I had not looked at that avenue as of yet.
I'm happy to help facilitate that communication if helpful.
Thank you, Dr. Hoover.
Are there any other questions about our Prepare Conference and Art Showcase. Okay, thank you for those updates. I encourage everyone to place the dates on your calendar and register to attend. We're moving on to agenda item number 3. It's an update on bills related to school safety. It's been a busy legislative session to date. That's what I've heard here in Charles County.
It has been very busy, and we actually are fortunate to have Delegate Ebersol join us today. He stepped away from his many, many duties, and we really appreciate your time to be here. So it has been. So what we do at MCSS is really watch all of the bills that are being dropped over the course of the session, and then look to kind of curate a list of those that either have a direct impact at MCSS, where we are actually named in a bill, and or those that are going to have a direct impact on our school stakeholders, our school officials. So kind of just created a summary of some of these, as well as at this point in time, it becomes interesting in the session because you can really kind of see what's moving and what's not moving potentially. Crossover Day is coming up really soon, as Delegate Ebersol knows, so it is pretty frantic in Annapolis this week and next week. So the first one, House Bill 416, and it was cross-filed this year in the Senate on 432. It was filed last year. We talked about this last year. The active shooter safety drills and trainings bill. So this looks like it will definitely pass this year, as we've got cross-file already happening for both of them. Embedded in this drill are a number of items. It requires us to collaborate with a research entity to study the effectiveness and impact of active shooter safety drills and trainings on students, staff, parents, as well as to develop some statewide recommendations based upon that data. So this will require MCSS to reach out to different partners for us to try to either join, if there are some national studies that are already happening related to this, for us to try to engage with that, and or to potentially begin a study, a brand new study that I would assume some other states would be others would be very interested in as well. And so to really kind of inform the impact of these activities on students, it will require us to collect and analyze some data from our locals. And again, specifically looking at that broad variety of stakeholders, right? So students, staff, and parents that are impacted by these drills. Also within the bill is it bans the use of sensory simulations in any drills. So it bans the use of any replication of gunfire, smoke, anything that replicates what an active assailant event may look like for use in any drills with school staff. It does not mean that law enforcement agencies can drill in the evening or on the weekends when staff and students aren't present, for them to do their own preparedness training, right? Separate from what happens from students and staff during the school day. So this bill will require us also to engage closely with MSD, which we were already kind of anticipating, to look at making some updates to the COMAR related to drills. And then the other element in this bill is the gun safety storage. So MCSS must work, it's directed in the bill, with our state police to develop a sort of easy to use pamphlet, brochure, flyer that we are distributing to all of our LEAs for them to distribute at least annually to all parents on safe gun storage laws. So there's a number of elements that we've been watching and are prepared to be able to move forward with. Anything I missed on that one, Kate or Janine, in the drill bill as I refer to it?
No, I think you captured everything.
Okay. And then the next one that has actually, it passed unanimously also is this, so it passed the House unanimously. So House Bill 472, the school mapping bill, so school mapping data program. This would actually establish, so it was cross-filed, the Senate hearing actually occurred last week. It establishes this school mapping data program. So a number of things within the bill. It indicates that locals can apply to use their school safety fund to partner, to collaborate, to procure an agency to engage in digital maps of the school. So it's creating a digital map of the school footprint. So where classrooms are, classroom numbers, hallway names, the exterior perimeter, right, of a building, that it's a digital map that is available for first responders in the event of an emergency. What within that bill, it defines some standardization of the mapping procedure, which JN has been a great source of help for us to understand these elements. The bill does not require, so that's one of the important things for us to make sure our locals know. The language in the bill is may, so that if a local school system is using digital maps, what they would be required to do is align with the standardization that is defined. But it does not require that they have or are creating digital maps, at least at this point in time. So this was a bill that really kind of led to some collaboration between MSDE and the IAC on making sure that we actually were able to get some kind of amendments and rewrites to this bill. So it flowed a little more smoothly in terms of money, but definitely working with the IAC for us to collaborate more with the IAC related to the standardization elements on that. Any other on that one, Kate, too?
No, not for me. I mean, that was the big sort of amendment changes were the flow of the funding. So it'd be a grant program for us, and then the IAC setting the standards in coordination with us, because there are some other standards that IAC actually cares about related to maintenance and construction, related to mapping. So just trying to figure out when those standards get developed, if we can comprehensively address all of those areas.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Delegate Ebersol?
Ebersol, right, both have questions.
Thanks. I just wanted to point out that one of the questions that got asked was about the fundings from the grants, that would this impact the $10 million that's set aside for SROs? And the answer is no, I believe, unless someone wants to contradict me, that this is not taken away from those funds, that it would be current grants. And I want to also thank you all for working so hard with us on figuring out who was responsible for what, who was funding what. But I think we got it straight in the end. And we deeply appreciated your interaction with us on that. So thanks.
You're welcome. Yeah, we appreciate being able to collaborate on it. Yeah. Mr. Cormier?
Hi, good morning again. Joe Cormier, parent of a special education student. I heard you talk a lot about the interior mapping of the building, but is this also going to include the playgrounds and any athletic areas in the footprint? I know with the elementary schools, we have half-size fences, we have 8-foot fences. Some schools are, in a community, some schools are in a tree line. So are we just going to give the first responders all the information they need to be able to come at these various school sites with all the information they need to be successful?
Yeah, my understanding from just kind of doing some basic research on this, and again, Jan's been a great resource, is it's the entire campus, right? The entire footprint of the school. So the interior building as well as the exterior campus area surrounding that.
There's nothing in the law that requires that. Really, counties are going to, there is a company that has come to us and said they're very good at this. There are other companies, so it's not single source. And I'm sure that counties, when they get their grant, will be able to make that decision if they want to go with, I assume they would, with a larger mapping. The main concern was that when law enforcement and people get inside a building in any emergency situation, they really need a clear idea of where they're going and what rooms are used for. And so that was mostly, it was focused on interior, but I would assume exterior as well.
I know with the pandemic, we did have a large push to have outdoor classroom spaces and, a lot of walking trails. And I know my cross-country kid goes way out into the wood line. So I just want to make sure that we're, comprehensive with the entire footprint of where kids could be during an emergency.
Yes, thank you for that. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, from my understanding, from my understanding, what it seems like is 3 levels of mapping. One being the interior mapping, like you said, for response and any of the asset management, and one being the campus mapping of what's in the campus, every building, and the footprint of the whole campus, and then one for strategic response of emergency personnel, which would be all the fire stations, the police, and everything surrounding that campus, how they get to that kind of. So all 3 will be addressed from the using those mapping needs. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. So the next bill, Senate Bill 756, remains in committee still at this time. This is so titled the School Safety, Student Wellbeing Policies and Funding. So I say this is still in committee. The hearing for that was last week. Kate did a great job speaking to that, providing both oral and written testimony for this one. Does a couple of things. So this particular bill, Senator Hester had engaged with us before the session began and did some interaction with our local stakeholders, our school safety coordinators, to really talk to them about what they need. Right? What are some gaps as they kind of look at funding and look at the ability to use that funding. So within this particular bill, it actually creates some flexibility in the use of the SRO grant. So it would actually increase the total from $10 to $20 million. But then also adds a number of categories that that would be allowable for the use of that money, which was something that our locals indicated would be very helpful for them. It also, inside of that bill, requires us to, again, work closely with the IAC and MSDE to review and promulgate guidelines related to the physical security in schools. And then as part of that, so what's sort of embedded is based upon the outcome of those assessments, that people can use that money to, so they identify gaps, needs, vulnerabilities, and can use that money to address those vulnerabilities as well. So yeah, a couple of things that are allowable that this bill potentially addresses for us. And again, I'll ask Kate if she wants to add anything else to that.
No, I don't think so. There was a question in the chat from Lee related to the specifically the funding bills. So I answered in the chat, but I'll answer publicly as well. So Lee, none of the bills related to grant funding tied to private or non-public special education facilities. They're all specific to the Safe Schools Fund, which are public school funds. However, the budget bill that will be passed, our budget does include funding again for the hate crimes grant. So private and non-public special education facilities are eligible for those school safety and security related grants under the hate crimes grant.
But the non-public special education security grant will not come back?
That, I do not believe there is funding in that for fiscal year 24, at least not in the budget. But again, the budget bill has to pass just like everything else. So we won't know officially until April.
Thanks, Lee. All right, Senate Bill 127. So this one has remained in committee, and the hearing for this did happen a few weeks ago. This is related to firearm detection platforms. It directed MCSS to actually assess all of those available firearm detection platforms that are out there, and to actually create some recommendations related to effectiveness and what exactly the platform does and how it works, for us to be able to inform our locals related to the variety of these types of tools. It authorized use of the Safe Schools Fund for the firearm detection platforms. And just to remind everybody, the Safe Schools Fund is that very small piece of grant funding. So that's the $600,000 that gets distributed across the 24. So roughly only $25,000 for each LEA, which would be somewhat difficult for them to acquire some of these with that dollar amount. And so there were some language in there that really kind of directed MCSS to assist the locals in procuring those platforms. Again, this one has stayed in committee, and the hearing was a bit ago for that one. Senate Bill 1090 and cross-filed House Bill 1167. This one has also remained in committee. This was filed last year as well. We were sort of referring to this as the panic button bill. It establishes that MCSS create a grant program for the locals to procure communication-related emergency response programs. This was also a bill where we appreciated the opportunity to actually really be involved in doing some amendments, some substantial amendments to the original bill. Originally, it was just that it would be a single source, and Kate's much better with some of the words than I am, a single source kind of 911. So panic button, you, in theory, right, hit a button, it alerts the emergency response folks to respond. What we were really advocating for, again, based upon what our locals have told us, is our locals have really said that their communication needs are much more diverse than just that one single item. Particularly, and for those of you who are in schools, you know this, in older schools, the public address, your intercom system, can be very antiquated and not working everywhere. So being able to make updates, and that is an extreme cost for locals, making updates to those systems, as well as bidirectional amplifiers. So in our large buildings in particular, there are these dead spots, right? Dead zones inside of the building where communication does not work well. And CAD communication, so computer aided dispatch. So we were able to really do some rewriting of that bill that would make it much more flexible to use that money for locals to increase communication methods that, again, all align with being able to call for an emergency service. So be able to dial 911 from anywhere within the building when an emergency were to occur. And the funding for that bill was the $4.5 million in governor annual budget, was how that was. So there was actually kind of money inside of that bill being attached. House Bill 206, this one has remained in committee as well. So this is more of so these next few are more behavioral health related bills that when we met with our behavioral health coordinators kind of spoke about. So this speaks to requirements related to parents and guardians being given notice and required counseling. So basically it is that when school officials identify concerns related to a student, and that could be for self-harm or harm to others, some degree of concern, the bill language really speaks to child's violent or disruptive behavior in school, and both in school or during after school events, is that they must seek and participate in counseling with the parent or guardian. So the language actually says with. So this isn't just a student. This would be the student and the parents engaging in counseling. The penalty for if the individual does not, so if the parent or caregiver does not participate in counseling, the penalty is actually community service defined in the bill. And then it further defines, though, what that is. When the principal must, so there's some duties related to the school leader to notify the parent, and to under what conditions. So the conditions are if a student is engaged in 2 or more incidents of violence or disruptive behavior during a year, right? So 2 or more incidents during a year, which is actually, for those who are school officials, you may know that there are many students who sometimes meet that threshold, that the principal shall provide written notice to the parent or guardian of the student's behavior. And then within that written notice, require the parent to seek and participate in counseling with the student. And then you must, within that written notice, advise them if they fail to do so, there's a penalty related to that. So interesting bill. It has, again, remained in committee. We'll see if it goes anywhere. Some other behavioral health related, House Bill 1394. The hearing for this is actually Wednesday coming up. So this would, 2 things, and there was a earlier bill in the session that has already, was cross-filed and has already moved forward where, so in your student code of conduct, your student handbook, as well as student ID badge. So on a student ID badge, the bill that has moved forward, what used to be there was that you had to have information related to the suicide hotline. The bill that has moved is that it's just adjusted. Instead of the suicide hotline, it's now the 988 number, right? So every student on their ID badge and in the handbook must have the 988 information. House Bill 1394 actually expands upon that and says, in addition to the 988, it also has the Safe Schools Maryland, our anonymous reporting system. It also has the information for that. So on the ID badge and in the handbook, students would be given information for both 988 as well as SSMD. So we'll see. That hearing is on Wednesday, and we're submitting written testimony for that. Senate Bill 122. This is the one I was speaking about. This one that has already, in both sides, crossed over. So it's already going to happen. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with 1394 on Wednesday. Senate Bill 482 is this very, very large. This is one of the governor's initiatives being referred to as the Enough Grant Program. It establishes a new grant program that's run through the Governor's Office for Children and increases health and safety. There's a number, it's an interesting bill, has a number of categories in which this money can be used. So individuals, agencies, organizations that can apply for funding. So health and safety, the cradle to career, dynamic career support, family sustaining income elements. So it'll be interesting to see where that one goes. And then the last few behavioral health related bills, Senate Bill 1058. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Hi, good morning, Joe Cormier again. The mandatory counseling bill is interesting to pursue, but I would just worry about areas where those resources aren't exactly growing on trees to begin with. And if we're going to tell a parent you've got 30 days to get into counseling, it's hard for my kids to find resources now. Like I know parents, through CCAC who are trying to get their kids into counseling, and there's a 60, 90-day wait time to get into that. And, the one size fits all, as a special education parent, it just gets real sticky because then you say a parent has to go do X, Y, and Z, but it doesn't say what kind of counselor or if that counselor has the training in autism or, whatever the disability is. So I just, I would worry that these one size, fit all bills sound really good from the good idea fairy, but they have a lot of unintended consequences on the back end.
Yeah, noted. Yeah, I think the interesting part of that one, Joe, is the defined, right? Again, the 2 or more incidents in a school year. and the use of the word disruptive, right? So disruptive behavior, we kind of know is something that we've tried to steer many of our local school systems away from using disruptive behavior as a category for any kind of discipline related, because it is so very subjective and a little more difficult. But
and when is it a manifestation of a student's disability or a student that hasn't been identified with a disability for whatever reason? You know, those kinds of bills, you know, always tickle the back of my head.
Yeah, it's a little more complicated. Yeah. Thank you for that. All right, the last few, so Senate Bill 1058, again, remains in committee, has actually, so curriculum standards related to anti-hate. If you remember a couple of our meetings ago, we actually had the hate crime data kind of shared with everybody. So this has just been interesting for us to kind of follow to see what kind of measures and things we can do to help kind of support anti-hate happening across our schools and within our state. Senate Bill 1032 in committee still. This was a student use of force, actually was heard just last week, but authorizes a student to take reasonable action to prevent violence, reasonable force to protect themselves or escape an attack, and prohibits discipline to a student who has used reasonable force. It's just been an interesting bill to read. Senate Bill 492, House Bill 522. This did pass the House. This is the student telehealth appointment bill, where it basically requires LEAs to establish a policy to make sure there's a designated space in every school where individuals can participate in a telehealth visit. So both students and staff, that there be a designated private space for them to engage in a telehealth appointment during the school day. So there's also been a very large amount of juvenile law bills this particular session. So just a few of those that we've kind of teased out and have been watching, looking at. Senate Bill 326 relates to the questioning of juveniles, and Janine will jump in to kind of help with some of these. Senate Bill 326, Senate Bill 120, we were really kind of teasing out the difference between them, but sort of bottom line is, in the last session, there was a bill that was passed that required that in order for a juvenile to be interrogated, they must have a legal consultation, or must have legal representation, right? And so these two bills have, from our lens, kind of looking at them, are sort of, are looking at making some adjustments to that. So under what conditions an individual, a student, a juvenile, can be interrogated, questioned without legal representation is what those sort of define. I'll let you just kind of read some of those bullet points. So they've remained in committee to date. Senate Bill 52 was referred to as the Juvenile Justice Restoration Act of 2024. What this did was it again defined some particular areas that when a child of a certain age would be, again, as part of that custodial interrogation, would be privy or as part of arrest and an interrogation thing. So I'm going to move to the next one, because what occurred, so these bills were dropped relatively early in the session, and then this bill was dropped. So Senate Bill 744 becomes much more is a very comprehensive, and it appeared after some of those others. So we've been watching this one much more closely. It's currently in its third reading, looking in today at it. So Senate Bill 744, juvenile law reform. So it takes the age of a juvenile. So a juvenile who is 10 and has committed certain acts. So that's a change from 13 to 10. It shortens the period of time that an intake officer has to make a determination. So it takes it from 25 to now 15 days that a determination must be made. The act of a child under 13 that results in a death, that there must be a petition filed for delinquent and in need of services, allows the child to be placed in detention when already under supervision. If the act would be tried as a crime if it was an adult, committed by an adult, that it increases the amount of time the child can be placed in detention, and increases allowable probationary terms and limits, and defines members and activities of this Commission of Juvenile Justice Reform and emerging best practices. So it really defines this new commission inside of this bill too. It's very big, very comprehensive. I'll let Janine jump in with any other kind of large nuances for our students.
I think you covered most of it. It does, as you stated, is very comprehensive. It deals a little bit more with the processing and intake of juveniles and students in the juvenile justice system, as opposed to the other bills that you were talking about, which kind of go more towards interrogation of those students and when that can happen. The other bills relate to allowing interrogation when a parent agrees. So these are more in like a systemic, this bill addresses more systemic changes.
Yeah, and the reason why we watch these juvenile law bills, in particular these interrogation, is we really kind of look for where there may be some cross-section with our school resource officers, right? So if our school resource officers within a building are being asked to be involved in interviews and investigation, right, with the student, they have to be much more mindful of these laws, right, in terms of when they are present and understanding when they are present and a student is being questioned, they literally could be interpreted as being an interrogation. And so it's why we've watched some of these. We did make sure we actually reviewed the bill that was passed, the new law related to interrogation, with all of our school safety coordinators last year, so that they were mindful of the importance of making sure they didn't kind of cross any of those boundaries. So I think that is, oh, no, I have a couple more. So just a couple others that we were watching. House Bill 18, reporting of arrest. And this was really MSDE manages arrest data, but for us to really look at what elements we were supporting related to that. And again, particularly with our SROs. And then House Bill 303 was an interesting one to watch. We have a number of our schools that are using drone technology to kind of monitor activities on the perimeter of their schools on a campus, but also at large scale events, football games, things like that. So we were just kind of keeping an eye on this to look at whether there was going to be any kind of nexus to some of those activities at the local level. And I think that is it. Yes. So any questions on any other bills? And again, we have Delegate Ebersol here, so it's an opportunity to ask questions or make a pitch.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
I appreciate that.
It's done a great job, Kim. Well done.
MCSS staff is now going to share with the board the progress made on the 2024 priorities.
All right, so the first one is me. We're excited. So behavior threat assessment has been something over the course of the last year that we've been doing a lot of work with our locals on as it relates to threats posed by students. So a student who is posing potentially a threat to the larger school community or individuals within that school community. And we've had the implementation guide that was developed, the model policy from a few years ago. Megan shared at the last advisory board. We did a follow-up related to the cross-section of behavior threat assessment and the IEP. So the nuances for students with disabilities. So we are now moving to adults. So the plan had always been to then expand, so to really focus on students and then to expand the implementation guide to adults who pose a threat to the school community. So we have created a work group of individuals, so really a cross-section of different people from across the state that are in different roles, as well as engaging with our national partners, so the state police, the National Threat Assessment Center, some other folks to really join us in developing this guidance. So it is intended really to expand upon the implementation guide. We anticipate it'll look more like an appendix to the implementation guide. So the information that locals already have, understanding the pathway to violence, this will now overlay then that adult, the very different and nuanced element related to adults. So when I think about it, so to help you understand, there are different buckets of adults that potentially pose a threat, right? It could be a staff member who may have a grievance because they were dismissed, right? They're on a plan of improvement and are being dismissed. Could be a staff member who's involved in some domestic violence dynamic where they themselves are being threatened, but then that threat potentially comes to the school community. It could be a former student. We've seen this in a number, right, of active assailant incidents last year, where a former student that returns to the school has a grievance that they have hung on to. And then the other bucket really are parents. So parents who have a grievance against the school, who are unhappy with something that has occurred with their student or with their child that are posing a threat. So there's when I think about it, there's these three different groups. So the intention will be for this work group to come together to really do the research, have a lot of discussion. The timeline we're looking at is from March to May for the group to meet and begin to really develop some content, and then June and August for us to really get into the writing, the editing, and the finalizing of this guidance. And then in September, November, so the beginning of the new school year, to really publish, disseminate, train, roll it out to all of our public, non-public, private schools. Yes, so questions. Pam.
Good morning. I was just curious, now who was a part of this work group for this particular topic?
Yep, so I can send the list of participants from our advisory board. Actually, Mr. Bell is going to be joining us. We have some directors of student services. We have a number of school psychs, St. Mary's and Baltimore City. We have a local board liaison who is joining us. We've got an elementary and a secondary principal. Just trying to think down through the list, but I am happy to share that with everyone. Yeah. And Pam, totally open, right? If for you to take a look at it, thinking if there's a non-represented group on it that you would like to perhaps ask us to add, totally open to that. Yeah. Joe?
Hi, good morning, Joe Cormier. So again, with it, when we start talking about parents in special education, it can sometimes get very emotional because we're trying to advocate for our children. And when those communication skills aren't always in everybody's toolbox, it becomes difficult to get your point across. And I would hope that we wouldn't start labeling parents as threats when they come with actual grievances. And it's just a lot of interpersonal communication at many levels, from the school site to the county level. So I just want to make sure that we're being very careful about not labeling a parent as a threat when they're just trying to advocate for their student who is not getting the services or, getting, bullied or whatever it is. But again, it's a very, special education is just a very emotional thing for a lot of parents. And I'll make sure that we're cognizant of that as we start talking about labeling threat groups.
Right. No. And Joe, I think that's a great point. And for folks to sort of understand and tease that out is that how we create some guidance that makes sure schools aren't identifying that parent who's angry, right, as a threat, like truly, like when does potentially a parent, so to say this parent can't come to school to talk to that teacher, right, just because it's become emotional and maybe the language that was being used made just because the adult feels threatened, right, may not necessarily be indicative of us saying that this individual poses a threat, right? It's more indicative of some again, communication breakdowns, as you're saying. But we know there have been incidents, though, where there have been parents who have literally come to school with weapons and been a threat. So helping schools be able to make sure that they are very mindful of what you just said, right? Not severing, being able to differentiate between the I am upset, right, and the communication breakdown versus when truly it's something that we need to be concerned about. Because it's and again, I'll speak to kind of personal experience a little bit, Joe, is that there were definitely times where I had staff who came and said, I'm not comfortable, right, having the parent conference with that parent because they are so combative, right? And then it wasn't about us saying that parent can't be coming. It was really about, as a school leader, creating some dynamics where we could assist the relationship between the parent, right, and that teacher. And really try to restore, right? Make sure we're making that parent feel more comfortable and heard.
As a personal experience, when my child was younger and was more nonverbal than he is now, they put him on the wrong bus and we couldn't find him for 45 minutes. And when I got to school, I was hot because they couldn't find my nonverbal autistic son. So, it was a very stressful situation, but we were able to, resolve it and everything. But it could have escalated a lot if the administrator who I was talking to was not an excellent communicator and was excellent at de-escalation and was very proactive. So I'm very thankful that the day ended the way it went, but it could have went a whole lot different.
I appreciate that. Yeah. All right, any questions on this? So we'll keep you posted as this work moves forward. We have our first meeting March 19th. We're pretty excited about this, where it's going to go. And then so Dino's going to join me. So we also are excited about this initiative. We're actually there's lots of exciting things happening at MCSS right now. So the state coordinated response and recovery planning, we had a superintendent's memo go out Friday. I've been getting emails with leads starting Friday right away. So I'm going to actually turn it over to Dino to review this.
Good morning, everybody. This endeavor started actually almost 2 years ago this month. As you know, our responsibilities also include providing resources to the locals in an event of an incident or emergency on their campuses, and their resources become overtaxed. We've been doing a decent job of that, making sure that they have what they need and are getting connections made so they can get the materials and resources they need. We sat down as a collective group and realized we need to have a statewide plan put together. And we started this endeavor just about 2 years ago, meeting with a lot of locals and MSDE and MCSS, and we have a contractor that's been giving us assistance with this. We're at the point now where we need to test our plan. So that will encompass this May 10th statewide drill. Will be facilitated from the MCAC by ourselves, and each jurisdiction has been requested to locate and house up, run up their normal emergency operations center that they use in the event of an incident in their school systems, and to invite their normal partners, the local emergency management, the local fire and rescue and EMS, and their local law enforcement representatives. So it would just be like everybody in the room with them that would be there in an emergency. We're going to have a scenario we're going to give to them, and they'll use their plans to walk through. We're hoping we can tax them a little bit to the point where they need to make a request through their local emergency management agency to the Joint Operations Center, so that we can then help facilitate and guide them on who we would contact, or they would need to contact, or the needs that will be met from other outside agencies for them. So we're excited about this, and we're waiting to work out this plan to see where any kinks may be, so we can smooth it out and keep on rolling.
Yeah, so so just to kind of help folks understand is that, so at the MCAC office, so at our central office will be the facilitators and the MCSS staff, and we will live stream the exercise. So currently, right now, the four or five of us, MSD and MCSS, are determining what type of scenario to use as the exercise. Others will not know what it is, right? So we will live stream the exercise from the MCAC office, and at each of the 24 jurisdictions, they will select their own location, right? So in Charles County, Tia may be invited to the boardroom there, where she will join the Charles County emergency response team, right? So if there was a school-based incident in Charles County, these are the people that would be responding to that incident. So local emergency management, the sheriff's office, right? State police, other agencies that respond to them, and that we will guide them through the live stream through the exercise. So the exercise will start with the initial "this occurs," and they'll be given time to work together, talk through what they're going to do. We'll come back on with an interject, right? It's now 5 minutes later and this has occurred, so they have to then respond. So it's really leading them through the tabletop. And Tom, I saw your question. I think right now, what we've thought about though, right now in this initial one, is to have the 24 LEAs do it, and then that we were going to do another exercise just for our non-public and private schools. Actually, kind of during the summer was what I think Kate and we had sort of talked about. And again, we can work with you on a good date where it may be appropriate. And so this is thinking. So the leads, so each LEA is designating the person who will be the lead. The lead in, I'll just keep using Charles County because Tia's with us. The lead in Charles County, I don't know if it's Jason yet, I haven't heard, but it's probably going to be Jason Stoddard, is Jason will send an invitation to all of his local individuals that he wants to be joining, that are relevant to join the Charles County team. What might be really helpful, and so we're creating resources for the leads, so literally a checklist of people they need to think about inviting. We've created an invite that literally all they have to do is say this is the location and send it to them. Would be for them to engage their non-public or private schools that live in that are housed within their community. May not be a bad addition on their part just to have invite those folks to join them. So that could be something that we kind of add to the checklist of folks that are there. From observing, Lee, yeah. So right now I'm gathering the name of the leads. The information that will go to them is I'm in training the rest of this week. So it'll be probably Monday, Tuesday next week. I send them the resources. So can easily look at adding that non-public private thing for them to consider as well.
If I can piggyback on that real quick before we move on, we do have public school students who are non-publicly placed, so who are, special ed students at Kennedy Krieger or High Road or wherever, and I don't want them to get left behind or be the afterthought of, we're going to focus on the public schools first, and then we're going to get to those kids who are out of county placements. That doesn't make me feel good. So I really hope that you might consider including those placements where kids are, that we're busing kids, 40, 50 kids out of county every day because we can't provide the services in the county. They shouldn't be left out of these programs.
Yeah. And it's not leaving anybody out, Joe, right? This first pass is, so the intent of this exercise is to, and we put this in the letter to our superintendents for them to understand. So the after action report from the Uvalde, Texas incident, right? Clearly the recommendations from the Uvalde incident, and we all kind of know this because we watched it play out on the news, was the lack of a coordinated response from officials. And so part of our hope is that by facilitating this, we're helping to make sure that that coordination is happening, right, for a response in a local school. So the non-publics, without a doubt, are an important element, right, in terms of them as a school. But for like Kennedy Krieger, it would be the working with Kennedy Krieger to identify who their local responders are going to be. If they have an incident at KKI, right, and there are many different campuses, right? Lee has an incident at Ivy Mount. Who is she calling? Who does she know is going to respond? And then honestly, for our non-publics, the important piece for them in this kind of exercise would be the element of those first responders knowing who the clientele, who the students are that they're responding to, right? What unique considerations do they need to be thinking about when they respond to Ivy Mount? Very, very different, right, than responding to an elementary, a middle, high school. So that's why we're sort of teasing out that as a different exercise, because I think it will be unique. And I think engaging with Lee, yourself, Joe, right, and others to maybe have different kind of interjects for them, right? The student who's in the wheelchair and the wheelchair is stuck, I don't know, right? Like we create some different kind of nuanced interjects to really have the first responders that are in the room with you have to think through with you, right? How they're going to manage that. How do you engage staff in a different way? Yeah, Lee?
So we did this actually, Dino was here with us. We did it at Ivy Mount with the Montgomery County first responders. And it was very helpful because it did bring in what you were just saying so they could understand who our kids were. But what's also important is we're surrounded by those public schools. And so being able to be part of the observation or the exercise, because a lot of times what happens in those public schools can fall over to our schools as well. I mean, I literally have 4 schools surrounding me. And when the high school kids decide to have leave campus, they're coming to my campus. So it's those types of things that are important. But Joe, I agree with you, but we have worked over the last few years to make that a point that we do have the funded public school kids who just have those different issues that we need to make sure the school, not only the school systems, but the first responders understand who we are. And the more we can get our first responders here to our schools to understand our kids, the better the response is going to be.
I completely agree. And just the added transportation, the reunification after an event is how we're going to get kids from Kennedy Krieger back to Charles, St. Mary's, Calvert County, how those buses are going to be into, a perimeter that's being held, and, how all that's going to get done, I think is going to be an important conversation and part of that. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just to reiterate, this is just the first of many go-throughs of this plan. This is the first draft we're working on. We have knowns that we know about in the LEAs, which is why we're working that angle first. But our goal was to have about every 18 months, one of these virtual exercises take place, bouncing back between the LEAs and the non-publics and some of the privates also in the future.
But I think what Joe's saying, and you know this too, is the more that the administration of these non-public special ed schools and even some of the private schools, that they can observe what's going on, the more it opens up our heads and our minds to be able to say, well, if this happens here, how do we customize that for our population? And then we come back to you because, yes, all the public schools have our kids in them. We have kids who aren't served there, but what we've learned over the years is that it doesn't matter where the kids are, it's how do you program, how do you prepare for the students no matter what school they're in. And so being able to be part of the ground up is extremely important.
Yes. Thank you for all that. All right, and then I will pass it off to Sandy to give you an update on where we are with our Safe Schools Maryland numbers this year.
All right, thank you, Kim. Good morning, everyone. Kim, if you could go, there you go, thank you. So we are moving along. We are, for this school year, at 612 tips as of the end of February. Currently, the web form is the most popular way to report, followed by the app and then by phone. And you can see here where the different categories fall, our top categories. These are just our top 10. And overall, our tips are up 11% over the same time last year. So again, we are increasing year after year. But back to our categories. So just to give a little caveat between guns and planned school attack, guns is more of either somebody just has it in their possession or it's targeted to one person, whereas planned school attack is more of someone saying that they're going to quote unquote shoot up the school. So kind of more of a mass idea with that. So that's where our numbers are. We are still working with our non-public and private schools to get all of those on board and get them registered so that they also receive tips as soon as they come in, because it just does make the process a little bit easier. And so we are, again, still working with them. We do offer presentations for age-appropriate presentations for elementary school and then middle and high schoolers. We also have parent presentations that we offer at least once a month, where parents can just sign up. We send them the link to log on. We just need our schools to go ahead and get that information out to the parents for us. And then we also recently have kind of had an increase in requests for joining these Safe Schools Maryland presentations with two of our other presentations that we do, dangers of devices and current trends, just because they all kind of lead into each other. They all kind of work together, and just to help educate parents and students alike on these important safety topics. So any questions for me?
And Sandy, I just want to make sure that folks, so the 11% increase in tips, it's important that there's not we cannot directly correlate that means that there's an 11% increase in school violence in schools, right? The two sort of things that happen kind of side by side, and there's really no way for us to tease this out, is us increasing awareness of the tip line, right? Increasing that more people know about it and are using it. So if that is indicative of the 11% increase or indicative of, right, more incidents happening, it's really kind of impossible to tease out the two. So we just sort of make sure that folks understand that going forward. Yeah.
And to piggyback on that, we do often see an increase in tips once we do talk with students. So we'll see an increase in tips for that particular school, as well as some of the surrounding schools. Or sometimes they'll mention that, you know, I don't go to this school, but here's what's happening with my friend at another school. So we do see an increase when we do get the word out.
Thanks. Tom?
Just wanted to ask, any thought yet as to possibly a program to replace the gold, silver, and bronze program that you were running, which was very popular in our schools?
Yeah, I mean, we're still, I know I've said this the last few times, Tom, still sort of working on making those updates. It hasn't risen to the top of the to-do list. So gotcha. Yeah, the intention is to be able to create a sort of safe schools medal program. There was a bill that was introduced this session called the Lifesaver. I don't know, Kate, if you can remind me, there was a Lifesaver program that actually was directing the department, MSDE, to create sort of this recognition program related to schools that were, I think literally the language used in it was safe, and it was the word safety was used within this Lifesaver program. And it was speaking more to suicide prevention stuff and like Stop the Bleed, CPR, that kind of training for students, but could have been a nice nexus for us to kind of work with MSDE to look at creating a recognition program, right? That was maybe an MCSS, MSDE, and we embedded some of these elements of school safety that we've wanted. And for folks who aren't familiar, in the past, the medal program was really only connected to the Safe Schools Maryland. So increasing awareness of Safe Schools Maryland. What we want to do is just sort of expand that. So using Safe Schools Maryland, increasing student voice in school safety efforts, increasing actual events and initiatives and strategies happening within schools that help to make a school safer. So it's really kind of expanding, trying to expand the program to be more comprehensive of school safety, climate and culture, those kind of elements too. So yes, it is still the intention. It's just getting there.
Thanks so much for all of those updates. I'm sure that you'll keep us informed of the progress and the ways that we as members of the board can assist in those initiatives. We do have 3 other major initiatives that we want to talk about. So I'm going to ask Joe.
Hello again.
There we go. Oh, Kim, are you first? I'm sorry. Oh, Joe, okay.
Again, everybody. As you know, we have to collect use of force incidents when they pertain to school security employees and school resource officers in the state. Use of force is what we had been using as our title. We're finding that every law enforcement agency in Maryland has use of force policies, and they were getting a little mixed up between what we were looking for and their use of force policies, and it was causing a strain among themselves on how to do their reporting. So we sat back and looked at everything. And the first thing we did was we changed our name to incidents of force. So it does not correlate to their normal use of force policies that they deal with. From that point on, we looked at what we were collecting and streamlined our reporting process to be in complete guidance along with what the Safe to Learn Act of 2018 was looking for. We were collecting a little more information before, but well, it was causing a lot of time delays because of the information that they had to get from their respective partners, either law enforcement for LEA stuff and LEAs for law enforcement information. So what we've done is we created an incident force reporting guide that they've all received. It goes step by step on what we're looking for and how to report it on their dashboards. And we've created a streamlined dashboard for them to click into and report it directly from there. Years prior, we would accept different methods of reporting, from PDFs to Excel files. They've all been informed that those are no longer viable options. Every SRO supervisor, every school security coordinator has received the updated links, and that's how they're reporting to us now. So we're pretty happy. Hopefully that we're going to have everything even ahead of time, because the guidelines reports give them dynamic timelines on when to report things to help themselves also. So we're happy with it, and we're waiting to see the outcome for this year's reporting.
Joe, if we wanted to get our hands on those guidelines to review them, are they on the MCSS website?
I don't believe we have them on there yet.
Yeah, I'm not honestly sure. No, it's a good question. Let me check. I will double check.
Kevin?
Hi, first of all, I'm Sergeant Kevin Britt. I'm with the Frederick County Sheriff's Office and new to the group. So first of all, hi to everybody. Second of all, a quick question in regards to handcuffing related to use of force. I know my agency in particular and other agencies across the state have not seen handcuffing as a use of force or a force incident. Has there been any thought to, when the annual report is released at the end of the year, handcuffing being a separate statistical category and not counted as an overall use of force stat? Because I think, my agency and agencies across the state, and as well as I would think members of the public, don't necessarily see handcuffing as a use of force. And I'd be curious the thoughts on keeping that as a separate statistical category as a force incident.
Well, as a retired Montgomery County officer, I understand where you're coming from. We'll start there, but we're following case law in Maryland, in the Fourth Circuit, which stipulated that the use of handcuffs was a use of force, and that's why we're collecting that. Janine,
I'm sorry. I was having trouble getting my mute off.
No.
Yes.
Here we're back with this conundrum again. Like I said before, me being retired, we would use handcuffs before to bring incidents to a calming situation. Law enforcement's finding it hard because they don't use, in their use of force reporting, handcuffs where we do. And I don't have the state law with me right now. I can get it.
I know that we provided some guidance to MCSS regarding the use of handcuffs as being identified as a use of force. I can share, or I can find the guidance, because that was before I joined MCSS, but I have reviewed it and I'm aware that it exists, so I can provide some direction for that if it's continuing to be something that we'd like to discuss.
Yeah, so I'm gonna jump in here. So Sergeant, first of all, welcome. We're excited to have you with us. So thank you for joining us. So we are gonna continue to collect we are going to continue to consider handcuffing students as incidents of force. But your question is actually separate from that, if I'm understanding. So your question is, when we publish our report, is it possible for us to pull out the handcuffing incidents from the actual, from other types of force being used? And my short answer to you is we had not considered that, but we'll take that back. We'll consider what implications that might have. We'll talk to counsel, and we'll get back to you. So I'm not going to answer today, but it's certainly definitely something we can consider. So I appreciate that. I think that answers your question, right?
It does. Thank you.
And I will email you the when I find our letter from council, I'll give you a copy of that explaining why.
Hi, Joe Cormier again. I don't want to disagree too hard with you, Sergeant Britt, but anytime there's a seclusion or a restraint, I think that involves some level of force. So I would hope that we're keeping track of when a student is being handcuffed, whether it's flexi cuffs or a metal set or just restrained in some way, shape, or form.
Thanks.
All right, moving on to, so we want to share some new resources that were distributed to folks. We've been able to, in our non-public call and in our local school safety coordinator meeting recently. So we have developed guidelines and a tool for individuals to use related to after action reporting. So I am going to switch my screen to share this with you. So part of, so for a critical life-threatening incident, so LEAs are required by law when there has been a critical life-threatening incident, which is defined very clearly for them, that they must complete an after-action review. There are timelines of days and when they must do the meeting and submit information to us. As kind of part of those after-action reviews, so all of our regional specialists have to participate, join those willingly. But we've seen a great deal of variety across the 24 jurisdictions in terms of how they're conducting the after-action meetings, kind of how thorough, the depth of questioning that occurs within them, as well as then the follow-up. So when they identify, when gaps or vulnerabilities are identified, being able to make sure that they're addressing those gaps, right? So part of what we built is really that beyond the CLT dynamic, use of the after-action review as a way to really just improve, right? So that we want everybody, non-public, public, private schools, to start really thinking about how you debrief, hot wash, have an after-action review following a drill. This actually kind of even goes to the drill bill, following trainings that we do, as well as, and we do this as school administrators following big events. So after graduation, right, we take time the next day because it's usually late at night, but when we come back together, we talk about what went well, what didn't go well, right? And what complaints have we gotten? What were people excited about this year? And we do it as a way to make sure we improve, right? We make graduation better next year, right? Or we look at elements we continue to do or stop doing based upon the feedback. So this form, and JN will kind of join me in sharing this. We developed this form. It's on our webpage, and we've really developed with the intent that it can be used for any number of types of events. So we defined these tiers. So tier 1 is really these field day, open house, graduation, right? These planned events that occur that you want to just kind of document what went well so that we look at continuing and improving what we do in the future. Tier 2 are kind of the unexpected. So they don't rise to the level of a CLT that's required, but they're the unexpected types of events. A weather-related emergency, there's been somebody that comes to school, very escalated, that ends up putting us in a hold status maybe, and we're needing to debrief after. And then the tier 3 events. So tier 3 are the actual CLTs. So what this form does is it actually prompts people through the questioning stage. So they indicate, based upon the tier that they indicate, it gives them questions that are specifically related to that tier. And it allows them then to actually insert specific information. So as they insert the date and time of the event, a brief description of what happened, they get to questions related to fatalities. So each one of these fields that I open gives me new information. So when did we hold the meeting? Who was involved in the meeting? It allows me to add as many rows as need be. And then the incident details. So as part of this is we've embedded kind of guidance. So when I go to the incident details, this pre-event, so this gives me a little description about what was happening before, right? What were some conditions maybe that occurred that potentially led to the event? So they're documenting any event information pre-event, and then the actual event itself, what it was that happened, and then the post-event, what it was that happened. And then also as part of this, because as part of the event should be the considerations related to recovery and the post-event after. So if I were to click yes for these, it then allows me to embed information here. So did we do a staff debrief? And yes, we did on this date, and this is what we shared. And I see a couple questions in the box. Let me get through the form, and then we can answer some other specifics related to it. Peripheral. So what occurs with each of these is that, so we're going to define here at the end what went well, what could we have done better, and then we define corrective action steps. So we're going to have 2 corrective action steps. It actually allows me to write in there what we're going to do, right? And what our target completion is. So this is really kind of like that school improvement plan. We're going to do this. It should be due on this date. This is the person who's responsible for making sure it happens. And then what resources do we need, right? Money, people, whatever. Lessons learned. What lessons have we learned? And again, corrective action and recommendations. So the individual has a choice to either save it and then come back to it. If they do the save for now feature, they literally are just given an email and a link that allows them to go back. It doesn't live kind of anywhere. And Jan will kind of talk to you about privacy stuff so you understand where it lives. If I push submit, what happens then is if I'm the person here in the very beginning who my name and the email that I put here, that is the individual who will get the PDF form. So it's actually a PDF summary of all of the information I inputted into the form, comes to me in the form of like a report, okay? That then I can save, I can print and save for the future. I've thought about it in terms of, we have principals that transition from school to school way too more than it should happen, but a lot, right? So a principal who was there last year at High Point High School, right? Next year, it's a new principal. If that new principal could actually have some documentation there that allows them to look back at, what did we define as things that were important that went well, or what should we be correcting? Again, graduation, people couldn't get. We had a long line of traffic was difficult coming in, that we had decided we were going to do something different. If I don't know that, right? As the new principal, if nobody informs me of that, I end up making the same mistake. And we see that often in schools, this pattern of mistakes made because we don't share information well from group to group. So this form is available online. I'm going to actually pass it to JN so he can explain to you what we've done to make sure we don't live with any of this data.
All right, I just tossed the link for the form in the chat as well for anyone who wants to jump in and see for themselves. They can see the screen properly that is being shared. But the idea behind the form is that it is provided as a tool, not so much as a data gathering form, but as a tool that can generate a report that is temporarily processed and sent back to the user who is creating that particular report. And that is how the entire thing works. There is 2 stages of this. One, like Pam asked, if you are inputting something and if you have to save and come back, what it does is, you can click that save option at the end and it'll send a link to you in the email. And when you hit that link, you can continue from where you left off. But in order to save that information, it goes into encrypted mode where we can see it at that point if you don't complete it. And no one can see it. It just sits in encryption apart from that one particular link that comes into your email. That link is the key for decryption. And once you click that link, it decrypts and it's FERPA compliant at that point. And you would be able to continue from where you left off with your information. Further, once you complete all the information and when you hit the submit button, what that triggers is a workflow where it starts to decrypt all the information and puts it into a PDF document like Kim mentioned, and that is not an encrypted document, it's just a regular PDF document. And that gets attached to an email and is sent to your own email that you provided in the beginning of the report. And once you get that, and the confirmation of that sent mail is obtained by the system, within an hour, it'll auto delete all the information from the system itself. So we keep a processing time of roughly an hour and how long it takes to decrypt, encrypt, and back to processing that report. And once that's done, we no longer can see, or no one can see. The only document that remains at that point is that PDF that is residing in your particular email. And you can forward that PDF to work up your workflows, to get authorized from your side of things, as well as you can take that PDF and basically turn it into a Word document if you want to edit it, or you can edit it using Adobe Acrobat Pro directly if you want any changes made in that report. The only difference between the form and the report is that in the report, the formatting is slightly different. It's slimmer, all those help text and everything is removed so that you get a clean report of what you entered. So bottom line, we don't see or retain any of the information that you put in. It's merely a tool to generate a report, and the report goes to your email directly. And that's how the system is set up. Any questions?
Pam?
Yes. So forgive me on this one. 2 questions. One, depending on the tier that's selected, does that tailor the questions afterwards, or are those going to be the same questions for all 3 tiers?
No, it tailors the questions. It tailors the questions to a large degree. So if it's a tier 1 event, right, the questions are very different versus like a loss of life kind of event. Yeah.
All right, because so when you were scrolling through, one of the questions was body recovery, and I was thinking, how would should there be a little question marks in there to tell me what it is? But that makes more sense if it's tier 1 gives me a different set of questions than tier 2 than tier 3. Thank you.
Yeah, and we really are trying to, so part of the kind of messaging as we've rolled it out is to get school-based teams to use it in what I call non-stressful situations. So if you're using it, if you're using after action and getting used to doing an after action meeting, right? Again, under conditions where there wasn't loss of life, obviously, right? Or something significant. You're that much more skilled though, when you have a crisis, right? A major event coming together as a team to ask these questions and go through this process, you're that much better prepared, right, to do it. It's not as unfamiliar to folks. So trying to get folks to be using after action reviews for a number of things. Doing it following a drill. I mean, we sort of, and that's what I'm saying, like, this isn't an unfamiliar practice to school-based leaders. So I do a fire drill after everybody's back settled in their classroom, right? I pull my custodian and my APs together and we're like, how long did it take? Right? Like, you know, what we go through the nuance of, you know, what went well, what didn't go well. We actually go through it. But we don't necessarily document that, right, in a form other than the fact of what we have to send to the fire marshal. But I think this is a nice tool as a way where we're able to sort of document and growth and share that sort of historical information with others along the way. Yeah. Tom, I see, did you unmute yourself? But no. Are there any other questions about the form? So it is on the website, as well as the guidance document that goes next to it, goes with it. And last but not least, Ron.
Hi, Kim. Hi, everybody. Good morning. Yeah, last but not least. So last topic for this meeting, but as most of you probably know, we have a kind of a flagship training program for school resource officers and school security employees. So it's called out in the Safe to Learn Act. It's a model program. We have to have it certified by the Maryland Police Training Commission. And that has to happen every 3 years. There's certain topics that have to be taught and we update those as changes need to get made. But every 3 years we have to, if we're gonna make major changes to the curriculum, we have to submit those for recertification. That's coming up in 2025. So just around the corner, hopefully by the end of this year, we'll have it all submitted so that the first courses we teach next year will be new and improved, to say. So our training academy has several of the required courses involve things like de-escalation and crisis intervention. That's one of the courses we teach now. We're going to recreate that based on some promising practices that we found in some newer models. With those two things, I know we relied on CPI and some other similar courses for those topics in the past. We have a few SMEs who come up forward and said they can help. I think UCARE is one of the models we're going to look at, as well as TAC 2. They both have training that currently our LEAs are using, and we found some things in there we want to incorporate. So that's going to get baked in, and they may actually become de-escalation and crisis intervention become two separate classes. We have a new Pathways to Violence course. That's a portion of our behavioral threat assessment training currently. We kind of called that out. We're going to make sure that gets out to all the SROs and SSEs when we train them, because it's important to recognize those signs of someone on that pathway. The role of the school security employees. So one of our newer employees, Jeff Smith, is currently written one, and we delivered it just the other day. Great course. We kind of focused the course because of the requirement for certification. And initially there were more SROs going through the class than school security. We focused a lot on school resource officers. The new class, the new curriculum is also going to have this course in it that talks specifically about the role of security, because it is a bit different. And there are some things that when the school system hires people to be security, that they're responsible to do that the SRO definitely is not responsible for. We make that difference clear in discipline, right? School security employees can take part in that process, but the SRO absolutely should not. Suicide prevention. We have some great training. We've youth mental health first aid, QPR training. There's a lot of other training we've taken. We want to incorporate part of that, pieces of that into a new class for these employees and officers, that so that they can kind of recognize signs and symptoms and learn how to ask the questions, right, that you need to ask. And playing right into that, a new course on school resource officer and school security employee mental wellness, so self-care for these individuals. We have heard loud and clear that that can be a real issue. Just the attrition alone in a lot of the larger LEAs has been due in part to the stress and trying to deal with some of the things they have to deal with every day. Similar to other school staff, right? They've all had some of those issues. So we're going to put a class in there on that. We rely heavily on subject matter experts, so none of us specifically probably have those chops to be able to put that together, but we have some folks from 988 and some other folks who've approached us and said, we want to help with this. It's great when that happens. It makes the program add some legitimacy and makes the program even better. We got updates for implicit bias course, which is a requirement. Bullying and internet safety, dangers of devices is a course that Jim teaches. We're updating that. Current drug trends in schools, because that changes, much like the school law, changes every year. And managing gangs in schools is one of the first courses we put together. When we put this course together, it's in need of a refresh. So we've got some changes coming for that. And if there are any questions, that's it.
Hi, Joe Cormier. Once again, I would hope you guys are continuing your partnership with Pathfinders for Autism to keep training resource officers specifically in dealing with our students who are non-neurotypical.
We are, and they are a great partner. I love their program. I've probably watched it 10 times. I could watch it 10 more. The way they present it, it makes a big impact on these folks. I think that's, you just don't pick up these things in the police academy, right? The difference is just normalized adolescent behavior isn't something that police officers know, much less someone who's on the spectrum. So absolutely, that's going to be a part of it. We're going to leave that in. I think restorative practices is going to remain an entire day. So that's a great course too. But definitely, we're keeping everything else. We're just going to add a few. We found a little space there where we could add a few more courses. So we're not taking anything away.
I'd love to see their what to do for a traffic stop programming be adapted for all students and be something that school resource officers can provide to each high school. Because I think any student would benefit from that, what to do during a traffic stop training.
Okay, we'll take a look at that. We do have some training that we could kind of add that into that exists now. So something like, we could include some additional pieces like that.
Megan?
Sure, thank you. I just have a quick question. And I think I emailed with Kim about this, but I just wanted to make sure that there was training included on the procedures for emergency petitions and school resource officers' sort of involvement in that process. Is that included or anticipated to be included in any of the training?
There is 2 courses I know of that talk about that process. I know it has been part of our school law program, but it's also been in another, I know it's also mentioned in the Pathfinders piece on, students with special needs and such, IDDs and disabilities. So they get into that a bit as well. Is there something specifically you thought would be good to touch on for them? You do receive some training in IEPs, but.
Sure. Yeah, no, I think there was an article that came out about the use of emergency petitions in Wacomico County Public Schools at very high rates. And so we are just interested in making sure that process and that procedure is sort of well understood and that the school resource officers and school staff, but I know this piece just addresses the school resource officer training, so that would be included. And I'm happy to talk offline, about this, but I do think that would be an important piece of the training.
So our lead on the training was kind enough to text me while you were talking. And it's actually our trauma-informed care class. So that's, of course, we teach. Frederick County Public Schools presents that and wrote most of it. So I believe, I know that's part of it.
Okay, thanks for that information.
Are there any other questions? Thank you so much, everyone, for those updates on MCSS. Updates in general, and you all are all commended for seeking to remain current with the ever-changing needs of our school systems. Do the board members have anything at this time they would like to share, particularly as it relates to initiatives occurring at your agency in the coming months?
Hi, good morning once again, folks. Joe Cormier. I just want to share that I took your presentation for Handle with Care back to Calvert County after our last meeting, and Calvert County was able to successfully partner with the school system, the Sheriff's Office, the State Police to start producing that program with fidelity here in Calvert County. So I just want to celebrate that partnership, and we're working on a work group here in Calvert County to start discussing playgrounds and playground safety and updating our priorities in building and adapting playgrounds, not just for accessibility for all students, but making sure that the underlayment systems are identified so that when first responders show up, wood chips have a different burn rate than plastic versus a rubber tire. So making sure that we know what's in all our spaces and making sure that the fencing that's around our Littles playground is up to code and safe, and that our first responders know what they're walking into when they get there so that they know what barriers might be in place for them to access different doors of the building. So that's celebrations for Calvert County. Hooray.
Thank you. Hearing nothing else, I want to thank you for your engagement and using this opportunity to coordinate efforts across our organizations, supporting part of what we do here at the School Safety Advisory Board. We're now going to prepare to adjourn our meeting. The next advisory board meeting will be on June 3rd, 2024. It's a longer stretch of time because of the spring break holidays and end of the year school events. Please don't hesitate to reach out to Ms. Bryan or Ms. Buckheit with any questions or items in need of attention prior to the June meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Do we have a second? Thank you, Mr. Cormier.
I'll second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Yeah. All opposed? Any abstentions? Again, thank you so much for your engagement today. And I guess we'll plan on seeing each other on June 3rd.
Thank you. Enjoy your week, everyone.